So if we think about, some of the advantages, we've kind of talked a little bit about what network as a service is. How do we figure out what we need to implement and what's the best way to put that in our portfolio and in our active compute environments? And I think the first thing that is really helpful to do is to come up with that statement of need. Company XXX, we need a network in such and such location that'll have this much bandwidth, this much latency. Here's our SLAs, whatever that needs to be. Now, the tricky part is when you're evaluating a new technology or you're going for something new like network as a service, you don't always know what you need to ask. And so that's really where you can rely on vendors. And we'll talk a little bit more about that to figure out what you don't know. The other thing is you're really going to have to know what you're replacing. If you're going to look at network as a service, you need to know all the points of ingress and egress for your network. How do people get in? How do people get out? Which locations are coming in securely? How many people are coming in from non-secure locations or open access points? What are those points and what are we replacing? And those, in many cases, these studies are eye openers. I can't tell you how many of these I've done over my career. And people are so surprised that they have these extra lines out there. They're surprised they have connectivity to office locations that don't exist, maybe some old carrier lines. There was a whole industry at one time just going through people's phone records to figure out lines that were not in use anymore that people were still paying for. This same thing happens. It is a management when you're talking about wide area networks and local area networks and devices on networks, figuring out where these people are and making sure that when somebody leaves, all of their equipment comes back and those lines get shut down. If we do this as a service, then we have those dashboards and it's a little easier to do that. And honestly, then we have other people that can help and tell us which ones are getting literally kind of nothing. The other thing you want to do is you want to involve all of your departments. You want to get a super user from each department and a department head from each department. And the reason for that is that sometimes you're going to find applications that exist that those departments use that maybe the information technology department knows nothing about. And it truly happens. I can't tell you the number of times that happens. But what you'll also find in this discovery is there might be applications that they have that have maybe a fixed IP address, or there's some that absolutely cannot go down, or maybe now is a good time to add as we're going through all of these points of ingress and egress, and we're looking at our disaster recovery and business continuity plans. And maybe now this is also the time that we assign risk to those applications and figure out, which ones do we need to put on an always up network? Which ones, if they go down, it's going to be inconvenient, but it's not going to kill us. And which ones these are really nice to have, but maybe this technology ends up somewhere else. So normally when you see these network projects take place, the nice thing about that is that we now are assimilating everything that we're really using on our networks. We're figuring out what all our software is, where all these ingress and egress points are, who our users are. And now this becomes a big part of your disaster recovery plan, or at least a gut check of your disaster recovery plan. Or if you don't have one, maybe it becomes the start of your disaster recovery plan, right? So we want to make sure that we have all those people, because the last thing you want to do is spin up a new network and realize that some critical service has been cut off. I personally know of one instance where this happened, and the service that was cut off was the lines that transmitted payroll to the payroll company, so everybody got paid. Kind of an oversight. A very, very loud vocal oversight, right? So we want to make sure those don't happen. The other thing we want to do is make sure that we involve cybersecurity. So for most of these providers, they do have some set of cybersecurity that runs on top of these. Some of these guys, it's included in their package. Some will run that on top of your own cybersecurity, so you have that double layer if that's where you want to go. But again, you have to make sure you don't slow the network down. But figuring out what your cybersecurity response is and how that's going to work and who's going to be responsible, should there be an event, and what services they provide to you. Because if there's a place that you need to pick up and take over, those are things you need to know. And that needs to be coordinated with all of your trainers and your technical support, because these are the people that are going to train your end users on how to use this network, how to make sure that everybody is signed in the correct way and that we don't have smart users circumventing everything that we're trying to set up here with cybersecurity and access.